Hi guys, it's Lynn here. I hope everyone is having an incredible day. Now in this video I'm going to be potting up my little Epiphyllum guatemalense monstrose epiphytic cactus plant that I accidentally knocked out of its pot. And I wouldn't normally be repotting plants at this time of year, say it's February. I'd normally wait until the springtime. But because it fell out of its pot, it's a bit of an emergency. And I thought I might make a little video when I do and share some little care tips about this gorgeous little, rather unusual little epiphyllum, also known as the curly locks and curly Sue. So here we go guys, let's get potting. So here we go, this is my little Epiphyllum guatemalense monstrose, and the label here, Epiphyllum guatemalense monstrose, which is sometimes what it's called, and this is one that I got from Cactus, about 2 or 3 years ago now, as a little cutting. I think it was like that, and it has grown quite a bit. It's a slow growing epiphytic cactus compared to many others. And before I pot it up and show you the repotting, I'm going to talk a little bit about a bit of basic care tips. Now, I've already made a video on how to care for and grow epiphyllum, and it would be including this particular epiphyllum as well. So it's a much more in-depth video on the care and everything in there. So do check that video out if you want to know more about how to care for epiphyllum. Links will be up above and down below in the video description. And also, if you want to know, for example, how to take cuttings and propagate epiphyllum, and loads more info on epiphyllum as well. I'll also put the links down below in the video description to other videos on epiphyllums. Should you want more information on growing epiphyllum. And also as well, if you want to know what is the difference between an epiphytic cactus and a desert cactus, they're very different, especially in the care tips, then do check a video I've made out on how to tell the difference between an epiphytic cactus and a desert cactus. Links also up above and down below in the video description. Anyway, that's enough about the links. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the care before I pot it up. So with epiphyllums, as I mentioned in that whole how to care for epiphyllum video that I've mentioned, I go into a lot more detail on this, but this is just a bit of a brief care tips on this particular epiphyllum. So it's called Epiphyllum guatemalense monstrose because it's a monstrose form of the Epiphyllum guatemalense. And by monstrose, it means it grows sort of in a wavy pattern. This is only a small, fairly young plant. So I've had it for about 2 to 3 years, like about 3 years. So it's still quite young. It was given to me as a cutting that I got from Cactus online, a German online company and nursery. Absolutely fantastic selection on there of plants for sale. And as I say, it grows with its lovely wavy sort of curly appearance, which is why it's nicknamed curly locks, or sometimes called curly Sue as well. And they make lovely hanging baskets over time with lovely sort of wavy curly stems. So hopefully this will grow into a lovely plant. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, that the reason why I'm potting this on is because it fell out of its pot. I had this in my office on the hanging basket stand, and it actually fell out. I walked past and knocked it like an idiot, and it fell out of its pot. So I've got another pot. It needed to be repotted anyway because the roots were coming through, as you can see, lovely healthy root system there. And I've got a new pot for it to pot it on. I wouldn't normally repot plants, particularly cacti, even epiphytes. At this time of year, it's February now, I'd normally wait till about mid to late March, at least spring and summer, to repot plants. But as I say, this fell out of its pot, so it needs to be potted on, and I thought opportunity to put it into a bit of a bigger pot anyway. Now, when it comes to the light for these, the light requirements, epiphyllums, they're like a bright, preferably an indirect sunny position. Many people can grow epiphytes in quite shade and they do quite well, but personally, my experience for them to flower and thrive, they do like to have some sun. So either a very bright position with indirect sun, or a position that receives some sun, probably a couple of hours, either early morning or late evening will be best. They don't like to be grown in bright midday sunshine because they can suffer. They can often go quite yellow, and it's not good to grow them in full sunshine, so just bear that in mind. So a bright indirect position with part sun, part shade is best. And when it comes to watering these, well, I always water in the spring and summer. I water these when probably about the first few about ½ an inch of the soil starts to go dry, and then I'll give it good water again. In the winter time, I would then water less. But as I say, epiphytic cacti are very different to desert cacti. I keep the majority of all my desert cacti dry until the springtime to overwinter them dry and cool. With epiphytic cacti, I do still give them a bit of water, probably a water about once a month in the winter time. But in the spring and summer, I will keep them pretty much watered all the time, but I'd wait till the top of the soil starts to dry before I water again. And they're not like desert cacti. They don't like to go too long with totally dry soil because the roots can die back, and they like a lot more humidity than the desert cacti do. But as I say, I mentioned a lot more in the how to care for epiphyllum video. And rainwater is always best. If you can get clean rainwater, epiphytes love to have rainwater. If not, I'd recommend keeping if you've only got tap water, keep it for 24 hours and then let it 24 hours to let a lot of the chemicals dissipate, and then use the water there. And soil, which I'm going to show you here. This is the soil I've made up for this. I'm going to be using in here. And again, with epiphytic cacti, they don't like to have a very gritty, typical cactus type of soil like the desert cacti do. I use a lot more of moisture retaining properties in epiphytic cactus soil. And in this case, I usually make a mix of about 30% loam based soil, LOAM. In this case, I use John Innes number 2, with 40% peat, peat soil, 40%. So I don't very rarely use peat in my desert cacti mixes. In fact, I don't like to use peat in that, but it's great to use with the epiphytes because it adds extra sort of aeration, and they do like to have more moisture than the desert cacti do. As I say, they don't like to stay dry for long periods like desert cacti would. And I've mixed a bit of a mixture of 15% pumice and 15% perlite. But you can use either just perlite or just pumice. But I've used a little bit of mix of both of them in there. So it's about 30%, 15% perlite, 15% pumice, and 40% peat and 30% loam. And the loam I use, as I say, it's a brand by Clover. It's a John Innes type of soil, and it's already got added sand in it as well. So it's very well draining, but it's also a little bit more moisture retaining than the soil I'd normally use for my desert cacti. So that's that with the soil. Now, humidity. Now, again, epiphytic cacti like a lot more humidity than the desert type of cacti do. Desert cacti always prefer to have 50% and lower humidity. But with epiphytes, they do like that more humidity. They grow naturally in hanging off trees. They're epiphytic cacti. So obviously they do like that more humidity. Ideally above 50%. 65, 70, even 80% is quite good for epiphytes. But obviously if you're growing these indoors and you've got central heating on and everything, then try and raise the humidity by either spraying them with sort of rainwater regularly to stop. I mean, there's an example here, the tips have got a little bit brown. This one, as I say, was in my office growing on the plant stand. And at my office, I've got the majority of a lot of desert cacti in there overwintering, and it does tend to be a little bit too dry. So it's sort of harmless if it is a bit too dry. These type of cacti are very, very adaptable to different changes, but it can just cause a little bit of dryness. So if you can keep the humidity a little bit higher for epiphytes, that's great. Totally different to the desert type of cacti. And then feeding, fertilizing. Now, I don't feed these plants at all in the winter. I also have a lot of epiphytic cacti in my polytunnel, and I just keep them, just give them a bit of water maybe once a month to stop them from shriveling up. This one I would water more because it's indoors in the house and it needs more moisture. But still only a bit, I would still make sure the soil dries out totally in between, but no feeding at all in the winter. Now, spring and summer, I like to give them a bit of either a cactus fertiliser, good quality cactus fertiliser, or I also like to use a tomato feed used at a very weak strength for cacti and succulents. And I'll probably use that about 2 or 3 times a month. And this helps them to, this one's a little bit too young to flower, but the other ones, it does help them to give them a bit of a flower as well. And I've made a whole video on why I like to use tomato feed to fertilise my cacti and succulents. If you want to know a bit more information on that, I'll also link the video up above and also down below in the video description as well. Now, propagation. Now, obviously, when it comes to propagating epiphyllum, the most common way is by cuttings. And these are a selection of a few of my different types of epiphyllums here that I have in my grow room. And a lot of these were propagated all from cuttings. And I've made numerous videos on taking cuttings from epiphyllum, how to take cuttings, how to pot them up, how to root them, and also how to root in water as well. So do check them videos out. As I say, I'll put all the links down below in the video description on how to take cuttings and pot up cuttings and root cuttings, etc. And obviously as well, growing from seed. And these are 2 seed trays full of different types of epiphyllum seedlings, about 15 different varieties there on the go. And obviously come the spring, I'm going to be obviously potting these up into bigger pots, but they're growing very well. Very easy to grow epiphyllum from seed, and very, very high germination rate as well. And then this is what my little Epiphyllum guatemalense monstrose, my other little one here that I've grown from seed. And this is doing very well, starting to get a little wavy leaf appearance there, very cute. So very easy to grow from seed, but if you want plants fast and quicker flowering, obviously, then cuttings is always the most easiest way. So that's a little bit about that, and it's a bit of a basic care for this, but as I say, I've made a whole in-depth video on caring for epiphytic cactus, so do check that out because it's a lot more detail. Anyway, enough of my waffle, guys. If you made it this far, well done. Now let's get potting. And as I say, this is the soil mix here, and I've already mentioned what I've used in this, a bit of loam, peat, pumice and perlite as well, and I've given it a really good mix, like so. Now, a little bit of soil in the bottom there. Now here we go, a little bit of soil at the bottom, and then gently place this little cutie in there. And we'll be putting the soil around the edges. And it's always good when you are repotting cacti and succulents, always just go at one pot, the next size up. Don't go from a small pot, even if it has been very root bound, to a very large pot, because excess soil around the roots can cause a lot of problems like root rot and things like that. The soil has to dry out quickly, even with epiphytes. So gently tuck that in, tap the pot so the soil goes down, all down the sides. And it's also just to let you know, with epiphytic cacti, they actually do prefer to be a little bit root bound. I personally, in my experience again, I find if they're that little bit root bound, they're more likely to flower. I know I've gone ahead in the past and potted on a lot of my epiphytes, been a bit too over enthusiastic. You can all give them a nice big pot and everything, and then they don't flower for a couple of years because the energy is going towards building new growth from the foliage and also the roots. But if they're a tiny bit root bound, as long as they're not, the roots aren't coming through the pot and it's well fertilized and everything else, they're more likely to flower. So just bear that in mind, not to over pot, and that's with all plants in general. So a little bit more soil here. And as I say, it's a totally different soil mix than what I'd use with my desert cacti, because they epiphytes like a lot more moisture. They don't like the soil to dry out as quick. So that's it, that's all I have to do here. Now, what I'm going to be doing is, normally with the desert cacti, I would never water them as soon as I've repotted them, because it's good to let the roots settle into the new soil for a week or two before watering, especially if, I mean, I'd never personally repot desert cacti in the winter unless it was an emergency. But because this is epiphytic, it's okay. Now it's February, sort of getting towards the spring a bit now. But even with the the epiphytic cacti, I'm still going to keep this dry just for a couple of days. I haven't really disturbed any of the roots. Then I'm going to spray it. So then I'm going to water it a little bit just to help it settle in. So just a couple of days without water. What I'm going to do though is going to mist it. Get a little bit of a spray now. Just going to spray just the foliage so it's not going to dehydrate at all. And then that's going to go back up into the office, back onto the little hanging plant stand. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed that little repotting video and got a few tips and care tips there. And do check out my how to care for epiphyllum video, where there's loads more information on there. And thank you all so much for your support and for watching, guys. And for lots more tips and tricks on growing cacti and succulents, then please do subscribe to my channel and also check out my website, desertplantsofavalon.com. I want to send you loads of love, heaps of happiness, and tons of plant power from across the Emerald Isle. And until my next video, bye.